My mum actually asked me to ask you this because we've been dying to know, what is the difference between a religious poem and a prayer? Is there really one?
My goodness
I know.
me. A religious poem and a prayer. I think there are many reasons for prayer.
Yeah.
I think theologically there are about 7. Right? One,
Right.
you could be praying to say thanks. You could be praying to ask for forgiveness, and so on. I think, however, a poem which is religious is nearly always a poem of praise.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think it gets very close to prayer. Because that is also one of the stages of prayer, to praise your Creator. So a religious poem, particularly one of Donne's, and you have read some of them yourself, Go and Batter My Heart, Three-Person God, for instance. It's a prayer. There's no doubt about it. It's in poetic form, but certainly a prayer. So I think it's very difficult, rather, to separate them and say, no, that's a different category. I think sometimes there is no doubt that a religious poem will be a prayer, perhaps a very personal one. But, of course, by reading it, you recreate it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so it becomes yours. If that makes any
That
sense.
does.
Do you think, like, to me, a prayer is kind of like speaking directly to God, but a poem seems more like you're praising God to other people. That's my kind of impression. Like, a prayer is not more personal than a poem, but like more within yourself
yes.
than a
prayer
poem.
doesn't have a regular form of words, of course. A prayer can be as simple as, God help me. Whereas a poem obviously has a standard format and a standard choice of language. But you can make that your own just as well. I think by saying in a quiet moment, batter my heart, three-person God, for you as yet but knock, seek, shine. That's your poem. It's your prayer.
We have a text asking, does Mr. McGurk think there's a big difference in what atheists get from religious poems and what believers do?
My goodness.
I know, all these philosophical
Of a
questions.
theological nature.
They're going to get easier, don't worry.
Well, I think, yes, by definition they have to be. But I think no matter whether or not you believe in God, I think you can appreciate the sentiments of somebody else who does.
Yeah.
Quite easily. And of course we have noticed that when we have studied Donne's religious poetry, there is very little to separate it from his love poetry.
Yeah.
It has that same passion. And so therefore my answer is yes. They can see different things in it, but I think they can appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that you were a librarian before for 20 years, but what made you decide that you really wanted to be an English teacher?
I'll tell you the truth, well, shall I?
Yes.
I used to buy books. That's what I did. I bought books for the district. And I had an enormous budget of over £250,000 to buy fiction, a lot of books, for various branch libraries.
Yeah.
And what was happening, I noticed that as the years went on, I wasn't able to buy books which I thought a library should buy. I wasn't able to buy literary fiction on any great scale, even to the extent of buying maybe one for a major library. What most of my budget was spent on was buying, say, 30, 40 copies of the one bestseller. And I thought, goodness me, that's not how things should be. Libraries should be recreational, of course, and they should amuse people, but they also had another role, which I thought was an intellectual role, to make people's inner life, deeper, better. And I found that wasn't happening, so I thought to myself, where could I deal with books? Where else could I deal with books and actually make people read what I wanted them to read? And of course, school came up, so I thought, I'll go there. And I've had a wonderful time picking books which I really like and trying to persuade other people of their merits. I haven't always been successful, I have to say, but just occasionally, and that makes it all worthwhile.
That actually leads us to another question. So, do you always get to do books in class that you enjoy?
No.
Or,
No. You don't. It's brilliant with being with advanced higher class.
Yeah.
Because the range is very good. It's of a very high standard. Further down the school, of course, depending on the children in front of you, you have to pick a book, which they can manage, which is, applicable to them. So, no, you can't always pick what you want, but you're trying to be as enthusiastic about what you choose, whether it's your favourite or not. You've got to.
Yeah.
Do you, as an English teacher, notice, because obviously there's been some best-selling books that we've had quite a few times on the radio, like Twilight. Do you think those sort of books do make an impact on further reading, or do you think children just read those books then move on?
I used to be of the opinion that reading even the side of a sauce bottle was worthwhile, or the instructions in a packet of cornflakes. And I think part of me still believes that. So, there is a school of thought that says, well, any reading is better than no reading. But if you think about that for any length of time, you'll see that is not true. And, you can be led down false alleyways, you can be reading stuff which doesn't stretch you, which doesn't say anything about what it is. And I know this sounds a bit, a bit highfalutin, but really you read to find out about human beings, about human nature and about how people behave. And some of these books don't add very much to that knowledge. And so I don't think they have any lasting value. To get back to something that was said earlier about Harry Potter, do you think Harry Potter should be studied as a part of a comparative literature course? On reflection, my answer to that would be yes, because then it would show up how bad it was.
It's a good story, though. It has a nice plot. Maybe not the best written.
Sigh.
We have a text saying, brilliant show. Could Mr. McGurk be a regular, please? And we have another one asking, this song sounds quite dark with its minor chords and whatnot. Not what you'd think from David Cassidy.
We are seeing a different side to David Cassidy, yes.
And a different side to our Pulse listeners. I think they may be trying to impress someone.
Yes, they may be.
We got a very grammatically correct text from somebody earlier on. Yes.
Yes, we did. I'll see if I can find it.
Alliteration and everything.
Prolific poets, etc.
In class, you spoke of having lots of inspirational teachers when you were younger, or some. Could you tell us a bit more about them?
Yeah, I had two that I remember very, very vividly. One of them was quite a forbidding man. Both of these characters were priests. And one of them was Father Morris. And Father Morris was a Wagnerian. He listened to Wagner at every spare minute. And occasionally you had to go up to his room to fight, to get papers from him or something. And you would knock on the door, the place would be in darkness, and he would be sitting in a large winged armchair. And Wagner would be booming out from his, I suppose now, primitive hi-fi system. And he would not be pleased to see you. And I went up to him one evening. He had set us an essay, and the inspiration for the essay was a piece of music. And it was a piece of music from a Russian film by the director Eisenstein. And it was, in fact, program music. It was the charge of the Teutonic Knights across the ice to slaughter the Russians. And, it was really, I thought I'd written the best essay you could ever get, and I thought, this is going to be made into a film again. And I took it up to him, and he turned the sidelight on, and he looked through it and looked over his glasses at me and said, this is all very well, but you have put women in the essay. And I said, well, I didn't think I couldn't do that. I put them in as camp followers for the Teutonic Knights. They were all celibate, he said. There were no women anywhere. Take it away, boy. And read it again. And that was as much encouragement as I got from him. But he was such an intriguing character who did things like let us listen to music so that we could write, that he took my breath away. The other man was entirely different. I don't know if he's still alive. He's a Monsignor, I believe, now. Mr. Monsignor Dunnicky. And he was a tiny, tiny man. Rumour had it that he was a circus clown at one time. I don't know just whether that was true or not. But he was very small. But he was a wonderful musician as well. And he used to read poetry a lot. And he used to sit on the desk, and his wee legs would be swinging because they wouldn't get anywhere near the floor. And he used to say that he didn't care whether we passed exams, It wasn't at all interesting to him. The only thing that he would consider his life's work to be a success is if in 30 years' time somebody took down a poem and read it for pleasure.
Oh, which we do. So
He was a success.
Yes, exactly.
And if you don't mind me saying the feedback we've got, did you ever consider that you would become one of these sort of teachers that people remember? Because
God forbid.
Hundreds of people say that they used to be taught by you.
Really? And they probably all regret the moment immensely. However, I urge them forgiveness.
I doubt it. I managed to find the text we had earlier. And this was about... Now, who was this about?
It was about...
Edwin Muir.
Edwin Muir.
He is a prolific poet, like my alliteration. Moreover, I'm now using an excellent linking word.
Oh dear, how sad is that? It really is quite sad, because Scotland has lost his greatest poet. Mm-hmm. He had been ill you probably know, for a long time. And he had been living in a nursing home. He had still been producing work. He produced something for the opening of the Scottish Parliament, which was read out. His poetry, such a range of poetry, from what he termed concrete poetry, playing with words and word structures, and calligrams, poems in the shape of the thing that they were about, to tender love poetry. And he also is famous, I think, and I think you should look this one up. He's famous for writing now let me think of the exact title. Yes, The Computer's First Christmas Card. It really is worth a read. It's funny.
We could look it up. We have the internet right here. We could see if it's on, and we could read it out. Because